Attention, fans of Unfinished Business Television, we're thrilled to announce our proud partnership with Super 7, the ultimate destination for collectors and pop culture enthusiasts alike. Visit super74.com/AJEPYX today. Use promo code AJEPYX, and let's keep the good times rolling here at Unfinished Business Television.
Okay, Luke, thank you so much for coming on today. Jeff and I have grown up on you since The Wizard, so that's how I've been following you ever since then. And every now and then I put those movies on to remember those good old days when things were a little bit more simple. Um, so obviously you started very young, but what got you the acting bug to begin with?
I never, boy, I never had any intention of being an actor. I never would have dreamed that that would be something that I could do or be good at or anything like that. What happened was my mom and I had moved down to LA, and a guy who at that time was kind of my stepdad. He was kind of connected to, some people in the industry, and so he offered for me to go to acting classes, and it was basically free because he was a chiropractor, so he was gonna trade, some treatments to the people who own the school. Um and it was free, and I was a kid, and I was kind of like, sure, like, I don't know, maybe that'll be fun. And it was fun. I really liked it. I had a great time. And the people who ran that school, it turned out to be this kind of storied school, where like all these people went. Leonardo DiCaprio went there, and River Phoenix, and all these like really incredible actors, young, kid actors. It was all for kids. Had gone there anyway. So the people who ran that school, they were also managers. And so, when they kind of saw me in the classes, they said, "Hey, you should try to do this professionally, and we'll set you up with an agent if you want to try." And, it was like the furthest thing from my mind, just like a strange thought, but I had fun doing it, so I figured, hey, why not, try.
Mm. Well, I mean, you stuck with it over the years. Was there like a certain age where you realized, like, this is what I want to do, with my life for the rest of my life?
Yeah, and it kind of came late for me. I you know co- you know my the most of my success was when I was young. It was kind of in a certain stretch from, maybe age 7 to age 14. I worked a lot and did a lot of kind of high profile stuff. Um and then around age 14, and this is so, I just wish somebody had told me that this is the way the industry works. But around age 14, my mom was really sick of living in LA. She really didn't like the city, and she wanted to be out of the city. So she and I moved to Ojai, which is, it's like an hour north of Los Angeles. And during that time, it became, because in that time, all auditions happened in person. You got to actually show up, and which means you driving all around LA. Any old actors will tell you all about this. You had the Thomas guide, because that, we didn't have, the whatever, all the digital maps now and stuff. So you drove all around for hours. If you had multiple auditions, you might have to drive to the West Side, and then drive all the way back to Hollywood, and then drive to Burbank, and then, so hours, just hours and hours and hours of driving around LA. um so, my at that point when we moved to Ojai, we were like, we just can't, do all that driving. It's just it doesn't make any sense anymore. And so I stopped. So I kind of took a break from working, and I was really into that idea because I had been working a lot and I was kind of tired, and I hated the interruption of school, that always happens for kid actors. You when you get a job, you get taken out of school for maybe a month, maybe many months at a time. And it was always really hard, because I had friendships, and there was all the actual, coursework, the academics, and it always just got interrupted and suffered so much. So I was kind of like, I would love to just be a kid for a little while and go to, at that point it was high school, just go to high school and just be a regular kid. But what nobody told me was, as soon as you stop working in this business, everybody forgets about you. They move on, and other people take those jobs that you might have got. And, so when I came back to it after high school, and it was almost like starting from scratch.
Man.
Like people did not know who I was anymore. They didn't care. I really had to kind of establish myself again as an adult. And it was really hard. But in that moment, it was so hard. I jobs were just hard to come by. And in that moment, around age 19 or whatever, I sort of realized how much I loved that work. And I started to do other jobs here and there just to kind of, pay the bills, and I, of course, immediately realized, whoa, that's a great job. That is one of the best jobs that you can do it. So it was around that time that I really was like, that's the only thing I want to do. The irony, of course, is that that's when it was the hardest, for me.
Of course.
That's how it works.
So one of the early roles you did before The Wizard, you did a TV movie called I Know My First Name is Steven. And we actually had the actor who played your dad, John Aston, 2 years ago before he passed. He was wonderful with us to talk to. But being a kid and having to do such a touchy subject, especially being that it's based on a true story,
Yeah.
how much of the real story did you know or that you were made aware of by the director or maybe your family? And how did the director guide you through those difficult scenes that you had to do with Marlis Howard?
Yeah. They as best as they could, they tried to keep it from me. They tried to kind of, and it's a funny thing, because as an actor, you really want to, as deeply as you can, you want to understand the story so that you can communicate your part of it. But they, of course, they didn't want to, talk about the nitty gritty of, because it's such an incredibly dark story. So they kept it from me as much as they possibly could. Of course, I put it together. I figured out what that was. We didn't have the internet in that time, or else I would have just looked the whole thing up. But enough people, commented and told me, and it was like, oh, okay, I get what this is. I don't, I mean, I think I was 8 when we did that, and so I didn't understand it. Well, what do you mean? What do they do when they go to the bedroom? Anyways. I didn't understand it, but I put it together mostly.
Well, also, like, when it comes to roles like I Know My First Name is Steven, or even 21 Jump Street, and even Parker Lewis Can't Lose, which you were on, when you're playing a younger version of a character of another actor, do you try to, I guess, I know you were a kid when you played these roles, but were you intentionally like coached on how to play certain aspects of the character by the other actor, or was it you just came up with your own interpretation according to what the script said?
Well, mostly the latter,
Okay.
because it was, it was really up to the director, it was, the writers, that gang to kind of put it together. So it was mostly, I would go in and audition and here's my take. And,
Okay.
it was up to them to kind of go like, oh yeah, that, that'll work. We could see that, or not. Um, and, in most of those cases, uh, I'm trying to think now. So I know my first name is Steven was, Corin Nemec.
Mhm.
He was the older Steven. Um, Towards the end of my work on that, there's a I think it was mini series. I got to meet him because there was a sort of a transition, it was like, transitioning into his age. And so he was around on set, but for the beginning of it, he wasn't there. So it was like, I don't know the guy really, until I meet him later. So I did most of that work without knowing who he was. And he was, I mean, he had worked certainly, but he wasn't like a big star. Parker Lewis, obviously a little bit later, he became, uh, that kind of focal point guy. But same with, working on 21 Jump Street. I never met, I was playing young Chuck for that role and I never met him. Because we shot, everything being shot, for that stuff. It didn't involve, the series regulars, the older actors. So they weren't around. So we just never met them. And then, funny enough, on the plane flight home, that show, it shot in Vancouver.
Mhm.
And on the plane flight home, uh, Johnny was on that flight. And I was a big, I was a big fan. I was like, oh, that's so cool. I want to meet this guy. He seems cool. So he was on that flight and my mom was like, do you want to like go say hi to him or something? Or just try to, like, hey, I played you, maybe we should meet. Uh, and I was like, yeah, that sounds good. I'll do that at some point. And he passed out as soon as he got onto the boat, he passed out and got the whole plane ride. Oh, and I was like, I'm not gonna wake him up, come on. So I never got to meet him.
Oh man.
That sounds like Johnny, though.
Right. Who knows what he had been up to the night before?
So now, with The Wizard, I know you've been probably bombarded with 8 million questions about this movie because everybody's grown up with it if they had a Nintendo back in those days. But in terms of the audition process, where you only had like one real line in the whole film, how did that actually work to where you were able to land the part?
Right. It was tricky. My memory of the, of course, my memory of that time is spotty at best. But but yeah, there wasn't a lot of material. There weren't, there wasn't a lot of like scenes we could read. Because the character said so little throughout the whole thing. So a lot of my memory of it is a lot of that audition process was, like conversations, or like it was just sort of spending time with the, director and with, probably the director and the producers, but mostly director, Todd, who directed that. It was really, he was very empowered to kind of make the decision. So it was his decision to hire me, ultimately. So it was just spending time and so that they could kind of get a feel for who you are, and see if it might work. And Todd is a really wonderful guy. And I still talk to him, and it's been a little while now, but I still see him from time to time. And he told me after that, they saw a ton of kids for the role, so many kids. And he said that, the difference was with me that there was this crazy intense focus that I could, I don't know, for whatever reason that I could do, at 8 years old, which obviously for a lot of 8-year-olds, that's hard to, you know, focus on one thing, for, more than 15 minutes or whatever. But that's what I could do. And he said, that's what made the difference. You had this kind of, laser focus thing that you could do. And that was really right for the character, and so I don't, I still feel kind of, I have misgivings about, my work in that movie. It's, and kid, did my best.
Exactly.
No, all of us envied you, man. I mean, you got I don't know what it was like when you shot the ending, but to see you be the one to play Super Mario Brothers 3 before any of us, before he came on the street, I'm like, holy shit, when do I get this game?
Um,
And of course, I've talked all about this, but none of the I didn't get to play any of the games. None of the game. All of it was a recording of somebody else playing, that, and I think that, of course, this is 88 when we shot it, came out in 89, 88. It was like, these are like VHS tapes of someone else playing Mario, 3 that they then, play on a.
Did they just give you a captcha when it was over?
And the producers, of course I bugged them, I said, I gotta have this game. Looks great. It's a lot of fun. And they promised me a copy, which they never delivered.
oh man. So they probably didn't give you the power glove either.
No, I got no swag whatsoever.
Oh man. What a chip. I'd be like, I would have done the movie just for that. Really?
You could have had me for a bargain if you just,
Exactly. What do I care about a paycheck? It's like, give me the game and the power glove.
seriously.
Well, when you were working on The Wizard, I know your memory is spotty about it, but did you kind of realize like Fred Savage at the time was like this big deal and he was going to be playing, your older brother? And
I didn't. I actually kind of had no idea. That I heard his name, out of other people's mouths. But I never watched the show. The Wonder Years was kind of, and it was really dominant at that time. It was like its most successful kind of moment. And they, I think one of the producers on Wizard was a producer on Wonder Years. So it was all kind of, connected, and and then they scheduled it, really precisely so that he could be, he could do the movie while the show was on hiatus. But I never watched the show. I didn't, it wasn't something I was interested in at that time. If it basically at 8 years old, if it wasn't Saturday morning cartoons, I didn't really care. So yeah, so I never watched the show, but of course, as soon as we got to actually working, I put it together. I figured out like, oh yeah, this guy's kind of a big deal.
he's first on the call sheet.
Right. His trailer is a lot bigger than us else's. Oh,
So, okay, they don't let you play the games for real, but at least you got to run around Universal Studios at that time. So what was that like filming, like on the King Kong ride and running around that soundstage?
that's true, and that was so much fun. I loved it. I had done the Universal Studios tram tour. I don't know if they still even do that. But I had done that as a kid, and it was the best. It's so fun. Jaws, which I think Jaws is gone now. King Kong, Battlestar Galactica, all these cool things. Oh, the earthquake.
Yeah,
Anyway,
earthquake, right?
oh, they were so cool, amazing. So yeah, so I had done the tour, and I was like, oh my God, we get to walk around, behind the scenes of it all. This is so it's uh there's only up to here, is an actual like gorilla. Underneath that, there's nothing. It's just a bunch of like, weird weights and counterweights and stuff. So seeing that, it was kind of like, I was totally disappointed. you know oh, I thought that was an awesome, huge gorilla. I'm kind of looking forward to that, but it was not to be. My favorite thing about that ride is they had these huge ducks, and they would pump in a banana smell. It was the funniest thing. You know, I never, while doing the ride, I never noticed, like, oh yeah, it smells like banana. But that was one of the things they did for that attraction.
Um, now in your career, eventually you did do a short-lived television series, Davis Rules, with Randy Quaid, Jonathan Winters. Now, when you're filming a show like that, especially with Jonathan Winters, who was, Robin Williams' inspiration in general, as, off the cuff with jokes, was it hard doing like takes and being, I guess being professional when he's sitting there ab-libbing half the time?
It was an extremely challenging, extremely challenging, because I had never, again, I was still pretty young, but I never worked that way. I had done some comedy, but not a lot. And that's that's very specific to comedy. It's going to be mostly improv. Like, we'll write a line, but that's not what people are going to say. They're going to say whatever they want in the moment, and you're like, whoa, okay. Now he's talking about World War II or whatever, like, you got to just run with it, and they primed us. They were like, hey, this is what he's going to do. He's going to just talk about whatever he wants. So do your best and roll with it, and, kind of have fun. But it was weird, it was a weird way to work, coming from other stuff where they want you to be, line by line. They want you to be word for word. Oh, you missed one word. We got to do it again. It's like, this isn't that at all. Um, I'm still friends with Randy's daughter, Amanda. She's a super awesome person. She writes poetry. She's also an actor. Anyway, she told me about talking with Bonnie Hunt, who was on that show, and they sort of tasked Bonnie with getting him back on track. Like, that was her job, was to, he was going to just go off and make jokes, but she had to kind of rein him in and bring him back to the story, so that you can say the next line. And she hated it. She said it was so tough, to try to just keep him on, one subject. So anyway, but that, I just, I gotta say, as far as career stuff, that's one of the most, a highlight, like, I now feel so honored to have been able to work with a guy like that. Just what, a legend type of guy, so we got a season and a half of, working with this legendary performer. It was like, well, it was one of the best things I've ever, been able to experience.
So now I got a real deep dive question for you, because there's a lot of people that listen to our show that may not know this bit of trivia, but the movie Radio Flyer, you shot the original version of it before Richard Donner took over. Do you have any memories of filming that original version? And do you remember when you found out they were taking the whole thing over?
Oh yeah, I'll never forget it. I I think that's the only time I've been fired off of a job.
Wow.
And it was, I mean, look, they fired everybody. So, like, you try not to take it personal, but still, I got fired, you get fired. It's horrible. It's a horrible experience. Yeah, we shot 2 weeks on that, and it was, God, I'm pretty sure sometimes the details get fuzzy, but I'm pretty sure that was David Mickey Evans
Yeah. Yes.
who wrote it, who later wrote Sandlot. Or maybe before, anyway, whatever the timing is, he also wrote Sandlot. And so we shot 2 weeks with him. And it was, the actor who played my brother, I was the younger brother, so when Dick Donner came on and fired everybody, he brought the ages down, so both brothers were younger. So I was playing the younger brother, and there was an actor who played my older brother. And he was great, like, I really we got on so well. I loved working with him. You know, he was such a cool guy. So that was, you know, it was hard to just kind of lose that connection. And then it was, I don't remember which one, but it was one of the Arquettes who was playing our mom.
Oh, Rosanna Arquette.
Rosanna. It was Rosanna.
Yeah.
And so, you know, so I also have these real weird, faded memories of her and working with her that, you know, like where's that film? You know what I mean? Like those things happened and I remember it, but there's no evidence. And so it's, oh God, it's such a weird feeling. You know, so that was, you know, it was really hard. They, you know, after 2 weeks, they came into, you know, my trailer and said, hey, look, production's shutting down. Everybody's getting fired. And I just immediately started bawling. Like it was so hard. It was so hard. I still have some fun memories of that time, but you know,
That's
yeah.
good.
One of my buddies is Thomas Nicholas, who, you know, rookie of the year, and he was in the Dick Donner version, you know, so I give him a hard time. He gives me a hard time about that all the time. Like, you know, hey man, I was the original. And he's like, well, yeah, I was in the one that actually came out, you know, so whatever.
Speaking of Thomas Ian Nicholas, because this was a question I was going to ask you later, because you guys did these two seminal baseball movies that we both grew up on. When did you guys first meet? Did you ever trade stories about those times on set?
But mostly as adults, you know.
Okay.
We knew each other, of course, in that time. You know, the way with young actors, at least in that time, it's probably the same now, I don't know. But with young actors, you're always up for the same roles, you know, again and again and again. Because there just aren't that many, you know. So for every audition, you see your buddies, you know, you know, like, hey, it's that, hey, you, oh yeah. So we would see each other on calls, so we knew each other. And we had, you know, we did a couple things. We presented an award together at some thing, you know. So we knew each other. But it wasn't until much later, like in our 30s, that we kind of, you know, reconnected. And then you know, he and I he these are all his productions, but he brought me on as an actor to be, you know, in his stuff the last few years, 5 years or 6 years or whatever. And so you know, of course, in that time we compare notes and, you know, like, well, what was it like to be, you know, do all the baseball movie stuff. Funny enough, we both, you know, when I saw him again, I was like, dude, you know, it's like one out of 5 people who come up to me and talk about Little Big League think that I'm you. Oh, hey man, it's so nice to meet you. I love that movie with the arm and the baseball, you know. And I'm like, that's not me, but yeah. And so I said that to him. I was like, dude, I get mistaken for you all the time, you know, and I have to like kind of gently let him down. Or sometimes I just go, yeah, hey, it's great to meet you too. But and he was like, dude, that happens to me. Some, you know, people are like, I love your movie where you're the manager. And he has to go like, that wasn't me. Well, it made me, you know, it made me feel a little better about, you know, like, oh, okay, cool. It's not just me having that experience. You know, Thomas is the best. I love that guy so much. He's a great guy.
Okay, so when it comes to Little Big League, again, you were younger when you actually started in the film. Did you have to more be coached by the director to realize like this isn't your typical like teen or kids comedy? This is a little more, I guess, somewhat realistic, as a kid becoming the manager for a baseball team could be, but more of like deadpan humor in this film rather than, you know, like goofy stuff or slapstick. And
Right. Well, that was, you know, that style was much more my kind of natural inclination. I had done like I did a sitcom, and that's pretty broad comedy, but I actually did another sitcom too before that only ran for six episodes. Who also I just got to mention, it was Jennifer Aniston before Friends on that, and Mayim Bialik before
Malloy. Yes, I remember that series.
yeah, Mayim before Blossom, and anyway, a bunch of people, really great actors, but as it so often goes, you get what you get, and sometimes in the middle it all shuts down and goes away, and you just anyway. So I had done sitcom stuff, and so I felt like, oh, I can do it, but it's not my wheelhouse necessarily. I was much more inclined to a realistic style or that kind of thing. So I did pretty well with the tone of Little Big League. What I had no idea about was baseball. I mean, that character, the way it was written, he's an expert. He's a wonderkind. He's a phenom. He knows everything about baseball. I knew nothing about baseball. So that was where Andy was the director, and Adam, his brother, was one of the writers. I think he had done a rewrite or something. Anyway, he's not the main writer, but he had done some writing on it. And they both they love baseball so much. They're so passionate. So all the stuff that, all the references and the deep lore of baseball, all the inside baseball, if you will, was them. So I had to lean on them, for that stuff. Like, what am I talking about? I have no idea what I'm saying. And they walked me through it gently. Yeah.
So, before Little Big League, you also did another drama, but it was a thriller this time. This was Mother's Boys with Jamie Lee Curtis, and this was the rare time before later years where she got to play a villain in this. And there's some pretty heavy stuff you had to go through in that movie as a kid. So, one of the questions I have for you is, was she in character when the camera wasn't rolling, or was she just like super cool?
uh, she was super cool. Jamie is like a huge personality. So her being just herself is pretty, it's kind of like a character. Like, she's big, she's larger than life for sure. So yeah, no, she was I mean, it was a, you know another one of the other things that for me was really hard about doing that work, was you work so closely with people, and they're your parent, they're playing your parents or your siblings or all that stuff. And naturally, as humans do, you develop bonds with people. Um, and then the show's over, the job's done, and you just go your separate ways. And in a lot of cases, you'll never see that person again. And that was really hard for me, especially for me with Jamie Lee Curtis, because she was so, um, she was so kind of tender with me, and everybody, I mean, she's just that way. She was so fun and friendly, and there was just a lot of emotion in that connection, and then the job was over, and honestly, I haven't seen her since. So there you go. It's tough. Tough job.
What's difficult with that whole scene where she's basically nude in the bathtub and she's trying to get you to come close? Like, I know some of it you probably shot separately, but like as you got closer to the bathtub,
Yeah.
I don't know how you handled that at your age. Like, this is Trading Places and Halloween Jamie Lee Curtis we're talking about.
Yeah, it was intense. The it's a if you go back and you look at the movie, there's no way to fake it. In the foreground is a naked woman, and in the background is me. There's no way to fake that. So when we were when we were kind of setting up that shot, um, they were talking about it like, okay, how are we going to do this? We're going to do it like this, do it like that. And Jamie was like, well, no, this is simple. When the time comes, I'm just gonna, drop my clothes and then we're gonna roll and then, we'll go, you know, and of course I was like, oh shit, okay. And and all the the director and the producers, I think they all kind of went like, oh, no, that's not what we're gonna do. So in the end, it was a body double. They had another lady come in, and this is this is film stuff, this film secrets, but they like take it's almost like moleskin. Use that. They take moleskin and they put them on the sensitive parts. I mean, what a bizarre, it's just a bizarre life. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you also worked on one of the, I guess, Disney cult eventual hit films, Newsies. Now, working on that film, was that like the most rigorous training you've ever had to endure in your career? Learning the choreography, the singing, almost like putting on a Broadway show, only film.
Right. For me, thankfully, my part of it was pretty limited.
Okay.
I I was in maybe 2 of the dance numbers and sang on maybe 2 of the songs, but I was not hired as a dancer or a singer. Those are not my strengths. So it was very manageable in terms of the stuff that I had to do. But we did God, I think we trained for a month beforehand. On the Warner Brothers ranch, one of it's a whole backlot now. And it was so much fun. It was dance training, which I didn't love the dance, but it was fun to still learn. And it was singing training, which I didn't love the singing, but yeah, we working with these really amazing teachers and artists and just top of the game kind of people. So that was fun. And then fight training, which I loved.
Of course.
I loved. And they had, they built kind of some sets, real basic, but they built sets, and then they had like a huge trampoline, and we just did all this kind of super fun stuff. And here's my I have one little story about this. I didn't remember this happening, but my mom, relayed this to me. Um, it was Gene Kelly, came to our rehearsals, and he was just watching and helping out, or what, he had a kind of limited role, but he was just there. And he had watched me do some of the dance training. I had no idea who he was, so I wasn't nervous or anything. I don't know that guy, I don't care. And he had watched some of the dance training, and he went and he told my mom. He said, your son is a natural. He should do dance. He should be a dancer. He should do, keep doing this. I didn't care for dance unless it was Michael Jackson. I loved Michael Jackson so much. I used to have a white glove, and I would wear it to school. It's so embarrassing, but I did that. So Michael Jackson moves, I would have been stuff as
So, looking at your film career, you've done all these seminal movies that we've grown up on, like The Wizard and Little Big League. And I have to wonder, your profile was pretty high at that time. Were there other potential roles that you might have remembered that you auditioned for that you didn't get that were pretty significant?
Oh yeah. So many things that almost happened. Newsies is the best example that I can give you, because um right on top of each other, I went in and I read for Newsies went through, you do rounds of callbacks, usually for a movie like that and a big role, you do, 4, 6 rounds of callbacks. You go in a lot. So I went in, so I had gone in a lot, and I had reached the point where they made the offer. They said, okay, you got the job. Wow, amazing, cool, fun. But at the same time, also, what was casting was Hook. And so I went through all the rounds of Hook, including ultimately going to, the kind of final meeting, going to Amblin and reading with Steven, and like, oh my God. And Steve, which by the way, Steven is the coolest guy. I mean, there's been a lot written about it now about how great he is with kid actors, and it's so true. Like, he's just he's just has a gift for it. Like, reading with him was so much fun, so kind of easy, and he just makes it really fun. So anyway, so I went through all of that, and so like right on top of each other, maybe within a week's time, I got the offer for Newsies, and then afterwards the offer for Hook, and they left it up to me. I don't know why my agent did this. I don't know what they were thinking, but they left it up to me, and I just felt loyal. I just felt like, oh, well, they offered first, so I'll go do that job. So anyway, what might have been, there's Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman, and I mean, on and on. Like, that's a cool movie.
I know a lot of people that crap on it, but I saw it at the theater and have fun.
No,
Nice.
yeah, right. Maybe a little uneven, but like, you can imagine going and making that movie would be pretty fun. All that. Oh my God. That would have been a good time. So anyway, so many jobs like that. And like I said, as kid actors, it's kind of a small group. And so we would read for everything together. Elijah Wood, I would see him at every audition. Charlie Korsmo, who ultimately did Hook, saw him at every audition. So there was a lot of stuff. Elijah, of course, is my, he's my foil, or whatever. Got all the best jobs. Yeah, but there were so many things. North, which was kind of, it didn't go that well, but big, it was the buzz around town was, oh, this is going to be the.
I think you dodged a bullet on that one.
Yeah. Rob Reiner was kind of on this insane run, like he had done like 5 amazing movies, and then it was going to be North, and everybody was like, it's going to be incredible. Anyway.
Well, as you came back to Hollywood or acting in general, you were in the film Cheaters. Now, working on that film, was it a little more difficult when you have to play a character who's more based on a real life person, so you can't like go off into any, I don't know, any actorly ways you might interpret the role in your head? And if you ever get the chance, talk to the writer, director. I think John Stockwell. He was also an actor. He was in a movie that I really love called My Science Project. Way back. I love that movie. Anyway, he's an actor and director and writer and stuff. But ask him if you ever get the chance. My understanding is that was a very, very loose interpretation of the facts. I don't, like, Chicago and like, a kind of a, Polish, neighborhood. But other than that, I think it's all pretty much invention. Well, I was gonna actually follow up that question with with working with John Stockwell, knowing he was an actor. before and then became a director. Was that kind of inspiring to you also?
Oh yeah, totally. And I mean, I've directed a little bit, and I write. I spend a lot of my time and energy writing these days. So it was super inspiring, absolutely, to see that somebody and it's happened a lot of times. There's a lot of actors who have shown their merit in other disciplines. But yeah, to be able to meet him and see how he works and kind of go through that all with him was super cool. I was also, I gotta say about that job, I was 19, and I was kind of a, I don't know, I was off in my own world. I was having fun. And I don't know, I think I kind of pissed him off a few times. Me and Blake, Blake Heron, who's also, God rest him, one of my best friends ever. We were having a lot of fun at that time. So I don't know, John's favorite top members.
So, as far as you know, since this was a loose interpretation of the real story, you don't know whatever happened to the real guy you played, right? Just disappear off the planet.
No, I have a feeling that would be really awkward to actually talk with him, because I'm sure all he would tell me about is how we got it wrong, at every turn.
He's like, I would have preferred Elijah Wood.
Exactly. How many times did they say that? We should have hired Elijah.
I don't think so, but
Now, I also see too that you also started doing a lot of producing work as you got older. So, what got you interested in going behind the camera? And then seeing that you're doing a lot more horror movies as of late.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to understand filmmaking, better. As a kid, I just didn't. I mean, it's so complicated. I think everybody who likes movies wants to understand movies a little better because they're crazy. It's so complicated, and there's all this. I mean, you can read these accounts from directors, and they're talking about, oh, this is what I did in that moment, in this moment. There's a lot they leave out, a lot, and they have to, because there's drama and political stuff. There's stuff that they can't talk about. There's always stuff that you can't talk about. So anyway, I always wanted to understand films better, and TV, understand how it's made, and the processes. So I was always kind of chomping at the bit, to kind of grow my knowledge of that. And so that, in my kind of like late 20s or whatever, that was where I felt like, okay, it's time for me to really, go out there and do it. And like so many people say, you could pay a bunch of money to go to film school, or you could make a film. You're going to learn, you'll basically learn, the same stuff. Maybe making a film, you're going to learn more. So that's kind of what I did. I was like, I could go to film school, or I could try to make a bunch of movies, and that's how I'll learn. And so that's what I did. And God, I learned a lot. Oof, I learned so much. But I did the whole thing. Me and my friend, bought a camera, and so we had a camera business. And I learned editing, I learned all the different stuff, sound design and all this kind of stuff. Just because I wanted to be able to, I wanted to be able to show up on a movie set and be able to do any job. And I don't, I don't think I've accomplished that necessarily, but there are a lot of jobs I could do. And of course, horror movies, horror is in our industry, horror is the most accessible genre, because there are a lot of horror movies made for a small amount of money. And there are a lot of people who are pulled into horror movies who aren't necessarily part of the industry. It's like, and it's where, I mean, Sam Raimi and Peter Jackson, all these guys, legendary filmmakers, who did incredible stuff. They all started in horror because it's really open, in terms of like, what you can do. There's a lot of room to be creative. And so anyway, that's what led to me producing, horror. Is it was accessible. It's possible to make, a horror movie for, $300,000 or, whatever it is. Not anymore, but no, but yeah, it was like, those were the opportunities that were there for me, and I seized them. I was
Well, since you're by now a Hollywood veteran, what are the things that you've noticed has changed from like, when you were a kid to now, just in the industry in general? Mm.
I mean, the big glaring, like, it's changed things so much that our industry is in dire straits.
Mhm.
The internet changed everything. The internet, forget it. It just changed everything. It's the dominant medium now. It used to be film. Film was the dominant art form, the dominant medium to reach the most amount of people and communicate a message, and to the, to the broadest audience. And that's just not true anymore. The internet blows film out of the water, for that kind of thing. So, and that, the film industry has adapted in some ways and tried to adapt in other ways and failed. So, that's the big one. Social media now. Um, I, I mean, it blows my mind, but people are like, for, as far as acting is concerned, as far as actors, they're like, okay, are we going to hire this guy for this role? What's his social media? Does he have,
Yeah. Mm.
does he have minimum, 50,000 followers? No, you're out. Forget it. But he's a
Yeah.
great actor. It doesn't matter, so that's a huge, that's a
Oh, yeah.
big change in the way things work. Um, and yeah, you, I'm sure you guys know, if you love film, I'm sure you're aware of how things have, the whole middle class of filmmaking. Every movie I ever was a part of, as a kid, that was a middle class film,
Yeah.
a medium budget. It wasn't huge. It wasn't the biggest thing ever. It wasn't, tiny indie kind of thing. It was the middle class. That's gone. They're just,
Unfortunate.
there aren't any of those movies anymore, or, I mean, maybe there's, maybe it's just changed so much, but there's way, way less.
Oh, yeah.
So all, like all these great, actors who I've been so lucky to work with. John Ashton is a great example.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
we made our living was in the middle class of films, because there were a lot of jobs for good money. Not great, but it was enough to sustain a career, to make a living as an actor. And those are all gone. And so, now it's like, I don't know, and these internet companies, Netflix, they've completely changed, contracts and how people are paid. Now people are paid so little. I don't know how actors survive now. I don't understand it. It's changed so much. And that, it, like everything else in the world, class division kind of stuff. There are the stars who make more than ever, and then there's everybody else, right? Way down here, who make like nothing, not enough to survive. And so anyway, that's a huge change. I don't quite understand, how that all works. As somebody who's worked as a producer, I certainly understand that you want to, you kind of want to pay as little as you can get up.
Sure.
That's what they're doing.
But as we kind of wrap up, one thing I want to ask you, especially with the way the industry is now, what would you say to like a young actor like you were back in the day trying to come up and get their feet wet in the business now?
It's you know, so social media, you know, that is it's an incredible opportunity, you know, like we never had, you know, in my time in the 80s or you know, whatever. Um, so, you know, so with social media, you can make your own stuff. And that, you know, I mean, look, it's really hard. But do it anyway if you love it. If it's something you really want to devote your life to, and that's kind of what it takes. You kind of have to be devoted, you know,
Right.
to survive in that. But if you love it, make your own stuff, and you're gonna the stuff you make is gonna be bad. You're gonna screw up. You're gonna make mistakes. It's gonna be a mess, but you'll learn so much. You will learn, and if you keep doing it, will get better and better and better and better. You know, so it's the ultimate. You know, and one thing that definitely has not changed. Hollywood is always so hungry for the young blood, the next, you know, people who are going to make, you know, great stuff. That hasn't changed, and as far as I'm concerned, that never will change. You know, so you can bust onto the scene with something really original and different, and you know, like you know, taking risks, and people will notice. You know, people really respect that. And, you know, and then before you know it, you're directing the next Marvel movie. That's how it works, right?
It's so true. And I guess one of my last questions, since we're wrapping up, uh, having such an extended career in Hollywood, like when you look back upon or rewatch some of your past work, is it kind of like either a time capsule or a yearbook for you? Like you watch it and then so many other memories come up while you're watching it? Mm,
Of course. Of course.
mm.
Of course. So many things. You know, I don't watch my own work very, very often.
Oh.
I can't stand I'm one of that type of actor. I can't stand watching myself. I hate it. It's like torture.
Mm.
So like the last, I don't know, 10 jobs I've done, I haven't seen it. I'm not gonna watch it unless I'm forced to, you know? So
Understandable. And
so I don't, you know, I really don't mess with it, but every once in a while we do like you know, there'll be a screening, you know, or something like that, and so there I am, and I gotta sit there and watch it, and yeah, of course, you know, all these crazy memories, you know, and you know, I mean, just a busy time, and there's so much kind of jammed in there, that, that there, you know, there isn't room for it all. Anyway, so yeah, remembering so much. I gotta tell you guys, I did a convention recently. It was in whatever or beginning of the year, and who should be there but my brother from Mother's Boys. His name is Joe Zimmerman. And you know, it was so much fun. I hadn't seen him, you know, since that job. And you know, and of course he looks different, you know, he's a grown adult, you know, guy now. But we reconnected, and it was really beautiful. Like, you know, that was such a gift of an experience to be able to reconnect, you know, with somebody who I had had this connection with, you know, so long ago when we were both kids. And he, you know, he loves D&D. He plays D&D. I play D&D. So you know, he told me on that job one of those days at lunch, I had run a D&D, you know, quick little D&D campaign, and that was kind of what, you know, one of the things at least that got him, you know, sparked his kind of interest in it, and now it's a
oh,
he does all the time, and you know, it was like, oh my God, that's so incredible, you know, like you know, anyway, these weird little gifts, you know, that once in a while.
well, hey, I'm sure, you know, kids saw a wizard, and maybe kids who didn't have a Nintendo are like, now I want one. I have to play.
I'm sure we sold a few copies of Mario 3.
Yeah, some record
And, you know,
numbers.
And Mario 3 was a great game. It's still
Oh, yes.
I play it's a great game. I love it. Amazing game. We also sold a lot of Power Gloves. And Power
That's so great.
Oh, yeah. So, also before we go, is there any new projects that you want to plug, or that at least you're allowed to talk about that you've coming up?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Boy, let me think about it for a sec. Oh yeah, there's so one of the things I was talking about Thomas. He brought me on to stuff that he's been produced. So anyway, we did a little show together. And the working title is A Motel. I kind of feel like that title's going to change, but maybe it won't. Anyway, so they're working on that. That's in the works. A lot of cool cast. William Forsythe. I don't know if you guys know who that guy is, but he won a Heroes. I was pretty excited to meet him, and Jeff Fahey, and a lot of cool actors in that. So they're working on that, and that'll come out someday. I don't know when. Yeah.
All right. Well, Luke, again, thank you so much. for
Yeah,
coming.
thank you so much.
This was a wonderful trip down memory lane, and I'm sorry they didn't give you Mario 3 at the time. That's messed up.
Be like late compensation.
So I just took some of my paycheck and went and bought one.
Exactly. You reinvested it.
Yeah, exactly. So I got mine. I'm all right.
Oh.
Well, thank you guys, man. It's it's a pleasure. It's really fun to talk with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
If you like this review, please be sure to like and hit subscribe to be alerted to new episodes in the future.